Well, the 2020 presidential candidates are focusing their campaigns on South Carolina this week as Congressman Jim Clyburn prepares to host the annual world-famous fish fry that'll take place Friday in Columbia. And the event is a chance for candidates to address voters, to get to know them and their constituents in the state a little better. Well, South Carolina also holds the 4th presidential primary and the last before Super Tuesday next March. And the events this week are really seen as crucial, not just for local politics, but national as well. CBSN Red and Blue anchor Elaine Quijano is in South Carolina this week, and she joins us now from Columbia. So, Elaine, we mentioned earlier in the show, today is Juneteenth. Senator Elizabeth Warren tweeted out support for the anniversary. Senator Cory Booker was on the Hill talking about reparations. Do we expect to hear more about this, I assume, this weekend as well?
Yeah, absolutely. That will likely be something that could come up here in South Carolina at the fish fry. But Senator Elizabeth Warren, she tweeted on Juneteenth earlier today, and I just want to read what it is that she said on this day. Quote, Juneteenth isn't just about celebrating the end of slavery in Texas. It's a necessary reminder that 154 years later, Black Americans still feel the harsh reality that the fight for racial equality in our country is far from over. I'm in that fight all the way. Now, this is a message that Senator Warren brought over this past weekend. She was actually one of 4 Democratic participants at the Black Economic Alliance Presidential Forum with Soledad O'Brien, where she focused on ways to try and reduce the black-white wealth gap. Senator Warren, in her answers, focused on a lot of the sort of structural, in her view, deficiencies that exist today as a result of discriminatory federal policies. Senator Warren went into a great bit of detail about how she would do things like boost Black entrepreneurship, for instance. And it was interesting to note, reporters in the room said she seemed to get a very warm reception from the crowd there at that forum. And when she kind of delivered her signature line, I have a plan for that, the crowd burst out in applause. But this issue of racial inequality, of economic inequality, is something that you're likely to hear, of course, not just from Senator Warren, but from all of the other 22 candidates, 21 other candidates besides Senator Warren, who will be attending the fish fry on Friday.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like an issue that's resonating with those voters. Earlier today, we know that CBSN political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns actually spoke with Columbia, South Carolina Mayor Stephen Benjamin, and he discussed why it is that California is just so important for candidates.
Well, we're one of the first 4 early contests. Of course, Iowa, New Hampshire, and Nevada. We have the largest delegate haul of the 4 states, and certainly immediately after South Carolina's Super Tuesday. So states all across the South, including some of the largest states out west, but certainly culturally, South Carolina will serve as a bellwether for several other southern states. They'll be voting right after we do, literally the Tuesday after our Saturday, Georgia and Virginia and others included.
So what are you hearing, Elaine? What are the candidates saying? What are their goals for this weekend in South Carolina?
So they're not here yet, but I can tell you that one of the things that, for instance, Jim Clyburn is hoping will come out of this, you're going to have an interesting forum. You're going to have from 9 p.m. to midnight an opportunity for these 22 candidates to have some time. Told it's going to be a moment on the stage, and we try to do the math. It's about 7 or 8 minutes, including the time to get on and off the stage for each candidate to actually address the audience. But they'll also have a substantial amount of time before that at the fish fry to sort of mingle with the people who have attended. And that is where Representative Clyburn really wants these candidates to be accessible to voters. And what are the things that they're interested in? They are interested in economic issues. Mayor Benjamin said they're interested in criminal justice reform. He also noted that here in South Carolina, what's important to keep in mind is that you have a group of Democratic voters that is perhaps more conservative than what might be, the norm in other states. That in fact, when you talk to voters here, the issues that matter to them don't necessarily perhaps line up exactly in the same way that they line up in other states. So those are the kinds of things we're going to be on the lookout for to see whether or not these candidates are able to talk about some of these issues in a comfortable way, in a conversant way, and in particular when it comes to issues of racial equality, what will their message be what is it that voters want to have done about some of these very large sort of structural problems that have been identified in the way it is that Black Americans in particular build wealth in this country. Those kinds of questions, it'll be interesting to find out what kinds of questions are going to be asked of these candidates and how they respond to those questions.
And I know you're going to have a chance to speak to some folks on the ground there. Give me a little sense of who you'll be speaking with, Elaine.
Right, so later today we are scheduled to sit down with Drew McKissick. He is the head of the South Carolina Republican Party, the chair, and we're interested in talking to him about his view on the Republican side. Of course, you've got Lindsey Graham, but also this is one day after President Trump kicked off his re-election bid, of course, in Orlando, and we're going to ask about what he hopes to see from the president. What is it that specifically Republican voters here in South Carolina are going to be looking for, and what it is that he's paying attention to on the Democratic side, if anything. We're also going to have a chance to talk to someone who heads up a group of college Democrats. This is at the University of South Carolina here in Columbia, and it'll be fascinating to hear what they have to say about issues that matter to them, whether or not they feel like they are a voice that is being heard right now within the Democratic process here in South Carolina. If not, what are those issues that they want to hear more discussion of? And are there candidates that are already seeming to sort of speak to them and jump out to them? So all of those things are topics that we plan to cover later today. Rena?
All right, our Elaine Quijano on the ground there in South Carolina. Elaine, thank you very much.